Our journey begins on a mountain called Lion Mountain, with a radiant sunrise that made the trees sparkle in their magnificent beauty. Birds flew towards the horizon, and rainbows emerged from the ground, completing the dreamlike, almost fairy tale painting. However, the monsters in the area went berserk as a spiritual energy appeared. Countless monsters ran wild, lizards, wild boars, and other mystical creatures. A female person was also on the run. There were still small traces of ropes on her feet, and her feet looked quite worn out as she ran barefoot. She had black lilac hair, a white blouse, and a torn black skirt, and she was already quite out of breath. She was followed by a military task force who told her that there was no escape when a horde of wild beasts was rampaging. Clearly out of breath, our girl looked down and noticed the group of wild beasts running one floor below her. One of the military men decided to take his position as our woman was obviously too fast for him. He then fired directly, but missed his target. The boss of the military task force pointed out to him that it was not a good idea to shoot when a horde of wild beasts was running amok and already awakened. Just as he was about to list the possible consequences, a shadow spread behind him and pounced on him. The task force leader turned around and recognized a wild beast on the mutant level. It looked like a wild boar, only much larger and with visibly aggressive eyes. It roared. And its sharp teeth were visible. The task force leader cursed because the shooter had hit one of its tusks with the one shot he had previously fired. The wild boar sprinted towards the task force, who then tried to run away. However, the boss quickly realized that this was not a possible option as they would never be faster than a wild boar. They would be inferior to the beasts as they were inferior in the firepower of their weapons. He then took out a bazooka and made it clear that a big creature also needed a big weapon to be slain. He fired a shot from his bazooka, but the wild boar easily diverted the attack, and he wanted to reload. Suddenly, a scream resounded, and the shockwaves that followed were immense, pushing dust and small stones away. Fangs appeared, and a golden mane came into view. Golden accessories adorned its feet. A blue-golden glowing horn adorned its forehead, and lightning adorned its mane. Golden accessories were visible everywhere. The ruling king of Lion Mountain emerged, Golden Lion. He stood majestically on a smaller cliff, looking down at the task force. Two members of the task force saw the lion and found it beautiful and incredible. They wondered if his body was covered in gold. Our trigger-happy soldier of the task force made a very fascinated face and decided to take on the lion. The lion showed no signs of evading, but jumped directly towards our soldiers through the hail of bullets. The bullets simply bounced off its skin without causing any real damage. With a swift swipe of its paw, the first soldier was already finished. When the task force leader then tried to shoot with his bazooka, the lion simply stuck its finger in the barrel and let it explode in the soldier's face. The lion looked around, wanting to know who would dare to attack him next. But all the soldiers were defeated and already lying motionless on the ground. He was just too strong and couldn't properly control his power. However, it was also the soldiers' fault, explained the big cat. Why did they have to create such chaos and drive the wild beasts into his home? The lion was once Liu Fan, an orphan who had worked really hard and finally graduated from university and was ready for a proper job. But then he was reborn into a world with spiritual energy, and he was a golden lion. And as if that wasn't enough, he got a system that helped him evolve and become stronger, no matter how absurd the circumstances were. So his skill power was increased because he roared, his claws were sharpened by the gunpowder from the bazooka explosion, his bloodline was heard by defeating the intruders, or his charm was increased because he combed his hair. Fan noticed the big wild boar that was looking at him in complete astonishment and then ran away fearfully like a cowardly chicken. Another demonic beast appeared, this time a parrot, who told the lion that Fan was truly great and that he had defeated the monkeys so easily. But Fan didn't want to hear that and asked where the woman who had run away from the soldiers in the beginning was. Suddenly, a giant green snake appeared. It was also a demonic beast and explained that it was a shame, but the explosion had probably thrown her into the chaos of the wild beasts. Fan looked forward, and his gaze indicated that it would probably happen more often that he had such bad luck. He then went to the end of the cliff and subdued the entire horde. The system subsequently gave him an increase of 1,000 points in his prestige. In the midst of the horde, as the dust settled a bit, the woman who had desperately tried to run away before could be seen. Fan approached the woman. And by now it had already gotten a bit late. Fan tilted his head down, and his fallen testicles could be seen. He noticed that the woman felt abnormal. She was already dead, but the spiritual energy was still in her body. Fan tilted his head and blew a purple cloud onto the woman. Her spirit then detached from her body. Fan was visibly surprised. A woman in a white robe and with white hair emerged. Her face was initially concealed, and blue flames accompanied her appearance. She looked at Fan with her blue-white eyes, and he became very interested. By now, it had become night. Fan and our ghost woman found themselves in a ruined cave within Lion Mountain. Radiant birds adorned the night sky. Fan told the spirit to please stop crying, as ghosts supposedly didn't have tears. However, if she didn't want to remain a ghost, she should simply reincarnate. Suddenly, a window appeared before him, and the system informed him that he had obtained a ghost and should bind it to himself as soon as possible. This frightened him. He hadn't done anything, yet a system window appeared before his eyes. Fan had never received such a message before, asking him to bind something to himself. Usually, he received notifications that increased his attributes. He wondered if this could be the main quest this time. Even though peaceful days would come to an end, he was willing to embark on this experiment. He wanted to plan everything properly but first needed to complete the mission. After all, the system wouldn't harm him. A flame appeared and told Fan that he had gone a bit too far. The flame circled around the ghost woman, who was still saddened by becoming a ghost. The flame, which was actually a small green candle demon, transformed into a little girl named Xiao Zhu and sat beside our ghost. She explained that Fan had infused his demonic energy into her soul, causing it to escape from her body. He had done the same to her. While Zhu explained this, Fan was half asleep and emitted some of his energy once again. Zhu continued to explain that there were two other prerequisites for being awakened as a demon through the demonic energy. Firstly, a specific constitution was required, and secondly, their inner obsession or heartfelt desire. Zhu asked Ling what had happened to her and why she was being pursued and hunted by soldiers. She also asked with a sweet smile if she was less frightening than the soldiers. The ghost woman looked sad. She cast an uncertain glance at Zhu and tightened her grip, gathering some courage. She explained that her name was Su Ling and that she lived in a village called Mang Village, located at the foot of Lion Mountain. Ling further explained that ever since the emergence of spiritual energy, people from her village had been disappearing, and now there were only 23 people left in her village. She looked down sadly. Ling continued to narrate that a few days ago, a group of people arrived in her village. They were soldiers armed with masks, weapons, and dogs. One of them had red hair. The villagers kneeled before the soldiers, who referred to them as trash and forced them to obey their orders. They were told to stand up and go into the forest. An elderly man begged them not to go into the forest as his son had already gone and never returned. In response, a soldier hit him and explained that he would be killed right there if he didn't go. The soldier drew a pistol and aimed it at his grandson, who would also have to go into the forest. The elderly man, lying on the ground, reluctantly agreed in fear. He would go into the forest. With a black eye and tears in his eyes, he went into the forest. After a few meters, he clasped his hands over his head and screamed in pain. His eyes turned red, and the veins on his head grew larger. His eyes rolled back, and his skin became increasingly discolored. Then he disappeared into a small rift that formed in the air. The soldiers witnessed the scene, and the villagers also saw what had happened, wondering what had just occurred. He had been there just a second ago. Subsequently, the soldiers took the grandson of the old man and forced him to go into the forest. His mother tried to stop them but was powerless against the soldiers. They pushed the boy into the dark forest, and a dog followed him. One by one, the soldiers threw the villagers into the forest. It turned out that the group was using the people to explore a path. Each villager who entered the forest disappeared. As soon as one disappeared, the next villager had to take their place, one after another. When they were almost at the end of the path they wanted to traverse, Ling had to explore the path. She realized that the mist of the forest had a hallucinatory effect. As soon as Ling entered the forest, she unconsciously started running in a direction. Eventually, she saw her parents. She ran towards them, screaming their names. But when she woke up, they were gone. Ling further explained that she fell into a hole, and there was a strange flower in front of her. She thought that this flower was the target of the soldier group, and she also saw a coffin, which she presumed was the target as well. However, she didn't want to simply hand over the things to the soldiers who had killed all the villagers and her parents. She couldn't destroy the coffin, so she ate the flower. After eating the flower, Ling felt very light and could see perfectly in the darkness. Shortly afterward, while Ling was hiding behind a tree, the soldiers found the place and took the coffin away with a helicopter. An unknown man in a brown leather coat shouted during the pickup. He yelled at the soldiers, asking where the flower was because he wanted both. And if they couldn't provide both, there would be no money. Since the soldiers couldn't find the flower, they continued to follow Ling until they reached Lion Mountain. Zhu was very angry and insulted the soldiers. Fan realized that the flower fulfilled one of the conditions for becoming a demon, and the second condition was likely revenge, which she desperately wanted. Fan stretched and pondered over the flower. What kind of treasure was it that the soldiers were so crazy about? He also didn't like that all of this was happening at the foot of his mountain, and he didn't know the reason behind it. Additionally, he wondered what would happen when the second spiritual energy appeared, considering that so many powers had already developed with the first spiritual energy. Fan also thought that he needed more eyes to ensure he wouldn't miss anything. He explained to Ling that he didn't care about his past, but if she agreed to become his ghost, her matters would become his as well. He asked her directly if she wanted to become his ghost. Ling was slightly surprised by the sudden question but tearfully agreed. Then a system window appeared, stating that the ghost was successfully bound, and another mission was now available. As a reward for this mission, Fan received a young body fragment. If he collected 10 pieces, he could exchange them for a young body. Fan was hooked. He held hope that he could become human again. Since being reborn as the Golden Lion, Fan had a system that made him stronger no matter what he did. Even when he became the Demon King of Lion Mountain, the system had never done what it did today. It gave him a mission and a reward. Fan thought it was an extraordinary opportunity, and the reward was also very mysterious. The system showed him that the new mission was to strengthen his innermost desire and make him a loyal servant. However, Fan wanted to know more about the young body, which interested him more because he hoped it would allow him to regain a human form. He considered the possibility of having a human form again much better than the mysterious reward he would receive for his current task. He asked Ling what her desire was and asked if he was correct in assuming it was revenge. She shook her head and assured him that she didn't want to cause any trouble for Fan. Ling explained that she had found a new home with him, but she didn't know what happened to her loved ones and relatives, whether they were dead or not. And even if they were dead, she didn't want them to just be lying around in the world. Fan recognized that Ling was very mature and grown up for her age. He formed a small purple cloud again, from which a little baby lion emerged. He explained that it was his clone and that he would protect her. He explained that in the event the second spiritual energy broke out, he would have to stop the beast uprising and protect his mountain, so he had to stay here. He formed another small purple cloud in the air, which obviously contained something. It had the shape of a dagger. The bubble flew into Ling's hands. It burst, and a powerful shockwave filled the room. Ling realized that it was a beast fang tooth shaped like a dagger. It felt very sharp and strong and had Fan's power. Fan explained that it was dangerous to go back into the black mist, and it would be good to carry a sharp weapon. Ling had tears in her eyes again, wiped them away, and thanked Fan. Zhu, the little flame demon, transformed into a small blue flame and also offered her help. She would provide light in the darkness. Ling thanked her as well. Ling, Zhu, and the little lion were now at the foot of the mountain. She explained that this was exactly where the villagers disappeared. Zhu replied and asked if Ling had told her that there was dense black mist here, but she couldn't see any. Ling replied that the black mist disappeared after the coffin was taken away. But the cute little lion noticed that the yin energy was still very dense and strong here. The group walked a bit further down the path and saw a pile of skeletons. Ling recognized the skeletons and said that the t-shirt one of the skeletons was wearing reminded her of her grandpa, who was forced into the forest. As expected, they were killed by the black mist. Ling sat sadly in front of the skeletons. Zhu, however, realized that she had died just yesterday, and her decomposition process was already quite advanced. She found it very eerie. The little lion thought it through and sighed. He concentrated his purple energy into a fist and spoke that those who have done good should have a good afterlife, and those who have bad karma should forever atone for their sins. Small blue particles rose into the air everywhere, and the cute little lion explained to Ling that he had purified the souls and reintroduced them into the cycle of reincarnation. Ling was ecstatic, although Fan hadn't done it entirely selflessly, as if so many souls were to stay here at the foot of the mountain. They would absorb the spiritual energy, which would cause problems in the future. They buried the bodies and prayed for them to rest in peace. However, Ling still hadn't found her parents and sat sadly in front of a grave. Zhu suggested going further into the forest and searching for them. So the trio set off further into the forest. The cute little lion suddenly smelled something and stopped them. He explained that they should be cautious because there were people ahead of them. Even if they were scum, they had firearms and were armed. Ling realized it was the place where the coffin stood and could hardly believe that the people were still there. Two soldiers sat among the roots and complained about being there because they were being fooled by Ling. One of the soldiers said that if they were to catch her, he would play with her first and then torture her to death. The other soldier found his colleague's taste a bit strange. He also didn't find it appetizing to eat next to two corpses. Another soldier explained that the two of them didn't even know who the corpses were and explained that they were Ling's parents who would definitely come to save their parents. One of the soldiers stepped on the skull of one of Ling's parents' skeletons and crushed it. They then mocked the other two soldiers and laughed. Ling looked angry and couldn't believe what the soldiers were doing. She grabbed the weapon she had received from Fan, and a purple aura surrounded her. However, the cute little lion held Ling back, who was visibly annoyed and angry. In the starry sky, a helicopter could be seen, dropping a rope with a person hanging from it. The soldier landed on the ground, and the other soldiers greeted their leader by her name, Lord Mei Yun. Yun was a muscular woman with red hair, and a long scar ran across her face. She wore a cropped top that barely held her large breasts. One of the soldiers reported to her that the flower was still being searched for. She replied that she didn't care about the flower but that the real valuable thing was in the coffin. Yun jumped into the group and said something. She said that only 49 of the spirits trapped in the coffin for over 81 years were slowly becoming life's soul soil. She lifted the ground with her hand, and the cute little lion recognized what she had found. The system also recognized this and immediately increased the intelligence of the lion. Fan was somewhat surprised that his intelligence had been heightened. It was the first time this attribute had been increased. He looked at his paw and could see his spiritual roots clearly. Then he looked straight ahead and examined the snake, also seeing its roots. The snake was flattered by Fan's gaze and interpreted the lion staring in a different way. Fan quickly looked away and whistled to divert attention to something else. Whatever Fan had done so far, the system had always made him stronger, but he had never received an ability like this. He could see his roots precisely and how they extended, and where the spiritual energy led. This was not only possible with living beings but also with rocks and trees. He noticed that when he traced the flow of energy back, he could even discern its origin. At the ruins of the sarcophagus where Yun and her soldiers stood, one of her soldiers praised her for finding the soul soil. However, Yun replied that she didn't want any praise. The soldier apologized and promised to keep this achievement a secret. Yun drew her sword directly and held it to the soldier's throat, the same soldier who had just praised her, making it clear that she was only confident that dead people could keep secrets. She wanted to kill the group of soldiers quickly and painlessly. As she expressed this, the other soldiers became angry, insulted her, and prepared to attack her. Her bracelet glowed purple, and the soldiers who were preparing to attack were enveloped in a purple aura and suddenly fired at her. Yun looked around and immediately launched her counterattack. She killed the soldiers almost instantly. She stood at the edge of the pit and mentioned that the man in the brown coat had spent his entire fortune, a huge team, and a lot of influence to obtain the coffin. She cut her arm with her sword, and blood dripped down. She blamed him for his own failure because while the coffin was valuable, the earth was much more valuable and magical. Her blood dripped into the pit and directly reacted with the ground. Yun insulted the man and explained that it was her idea to use the villagers. Suddenly, Ling attacked swiftly. Yun turned around and wanted to know who was attacking her, but Ling flinched at Yun's movement and covered her head with her hands out of fear. Zhu was surprised that Yun could see Ling, considering she was a ghost. Ling was puzzled why she instinctively dodged. She was a ghost and shouldn't fear attacks. However, Yun didn't see anyone and was also surprised why she turned around. She thought her bracelet wouldn't make a mistake, as it had just signaled danger. She reached into a small pouch on her belt, pulled out glasses, and was able to see Ling through them. Ling was angry and insulted the woman as a demon. She wanted to avenge her parents. Yun sarcastically replied that she was surprised Ling couldn't even leave her alone after becoming a ghost and wondered who she was talking about when she mentioned her parents. Ling became even more agitated that she didn't even know who her parents were. Yun said she couldn't remember every ant she had killed. Ling then rushed at Yun and tried to attack her. However, Yun effortlessly blocked all of Ling's desperate attacks. The cute little lion thought it was to be expected that Yun could see Ling. But he had a strange feeling. Furthermore, he thought it was odd that she wasn't shocked and afraid after seeing a ghost. Could it be that she had fought against a ghost before? Yun tensed her muscles to the extreme and prepared to unleash an attack. Fan realized what was about to happen to Ling and that it was something she couldn't handle. He extended his paw, and golden magic flew towards the fight. The magic pulled Ling back slightly, allowing her to narrowly dodge Yun's attack without getting much damage. However, her top was torn between her large breasts. Yun praised our ghost and explained that her sword was specially made to deal with ghosts. Ling thought that if that was the case, she could only dodge and attack from the shadows, but the sword's range was too long. Desperately, she wondered what she could do. However, she quickly realized that there was a blind spot Yun didn't see. She attacked Ling and struck her aside with her muscular arms. Zhu and Fan watched the fight from a safe distance behind a bush. Zhu realized that even though Ling had become a ghost, she had no chance against an awakener and asked Fan for help. Fan explained that due to his personality, he might not intervene because he believed that one must achieve revenge with one's own hands. Yun's bracelet started to glow, and she prepared for another attack. Suddenly, she noticed something. But it was too late, and Ling also attacked through Yun's blind spot. Ling had Yun cornered with her sharp dagger at her throat. Ling defeated Yun, and she lay on the ground. The cute lion and Zhu emerged from the bushes, and Fan scolded Ling. Zhu wondered what was happening. Ling apologized for acting so recklessly. Fan explained that Yun's bracelet was a type of killing intent sense device that always pointed in the direction of the enemy's attack, allowing her to dodge it at the beginning. Through the glasses, she could confirm Ling's existence. However, instead of relying on the glasses, she trusted her bracelet. She had also apparently suffered from an illusion spell before, which made her no longer believe what she saw. Zhu now understood that Fan had emitted his bloodlust at the last moment to confuse her senses. Zhu was proud of Fan for ultimately helping her. Adding to his explanation, Fan advised Ling not to act so recklessly in the future. Behind Ling, a large, ominous shadow loomed, and the body of the shadow was so warm that the air around it began to steam. A shiver ran down Ling's spine as she realized she had received help. Ling was surprised when she was revived, but Fan remained calm. Yun wanted Ling to die and prepared for a massive strike. However, Ling managed to block the powerful blow. She aimed to keep herself safe from the attacks of Fan and Zhu's swords, as they were highly effective against spirits, and both of them were currently in their soul state. Ling let the sword slide off and seized the opportunity for a counterattack, immediately cutting off Yun's arm. Zhu cheered Ling on, explaining that she had previously killed cows for her village and knew how to handle a knife. Small black threads formed from the severed arm and reconnected with Yun's main body. Ling was shocked and couldn't believe what she was seeing. Fan, who seemed to be beside Yun's body, realized that Ling had indeed defeated her, but he wondered why her clone was still alive. He decided to use his newfound intelligence to figure out what was happening and focused on seeing through Yun's shell. He discovered that the aura came from the soul soil. Fan recalled that Yun had previously let her blood drip onto the ground. Yun swung her arm, still connected by the threads, towards Ling. However, Ling blocked the attacks and realized that her attack range had increased, but her attack speed had significantly slowed down. Yun pulled her arm back. Ling seized the opportunity and sprinted towards her to attack. Her Shatter Snow Thousand Slash technique landed a direct hit. However, the black threads reappeared and held Yun's body together once again. Ling was slightly surprised and overwhelmed. The thread spread and overwhelmed Ling. Zhu pleaded with Fan for help, but he was afraid to intervene since his clone was also a primordial spirit. And it would hurt like hell if he got hit. So, for now, he decided not to interfere. The black threads engulfed Ling and disarmed her. She was completely overtaken by the black threads. The threads approached her teary eyes. Suddenly, a golden slash appeared and severed the connection of the threads. Yun's clone was surprised. Fan had used the first Yang body fragment to further develop his body into a more human-like form. He told Ling that he had told her not to be so reckless. Ling was relieved that Fan had saved her in this desperate situation and looked at him gratefully. Yun's clone stepped forward. Fan ordered Zhu and Ling to cover their ears and empty their minds, which they obediently did. Fan inhaled blue magic and roared a powerful blue shockwave towards Yun, pulverizing her directly. Fan reached for the sword Yun wielded and, despite it not being too bad, he was somewhat disappointed that he didn't receive another fragment. However, the sword continued to enhance the lion's attributes. Fan grabbed his throat, which was a bit sore from his loud scream. He noticed that his throat felt somewhat fluffy, and when he looked in a mirror, he saw that he was half lion, half human, with the human appearance being a few levels higher. He thought he didn't look bad at all. He also mentioned that the area he wished to have back was different and pulled his waistband forward. Zhu said that Fan had used too much power and not only pulverized Yun but also wiped out the soul soil. Fan replied that she shouldn't care about such minor details. However, Zhu was thrilled with her master's new appearance. The system then showed that Fan had absorbed the soul soil, and his intelligence was increased by 7 points, reaching level 2. This allowed him to see the spiritual energy in the air, and he realized that he would continue to grow stronger just by breathing if he followed the system's instructions. The system also displayed a progress bar above Ling, indicating how far she was currently in the mission. Ling thanked Fan, and he replied that he knew she wasn't satisfied with her revenge yet. He went to a brown cloak on the ground and put it on, saying that they would have to go further down the mountain for more information. As a result, the sun rose, and it was a beautiful sunrise for our group to admire. Since Zhu didn't have a young body like Fan, she had to hide from the sun, so she quickly flew under the cloak that Fan had just put on. Ling also wanted to save herself and ran towards Fan. He told her she couldn't do that, and he remembered that Ling could possess other bodies. He suggested taking over Yun's body. However, Ling didn't want to do that and started crying again. Fan asked why she couldn't do it and stopped her from going under his cloak with one hand. She replied that Yun was too ugly. Once the sun had risen, our heroes were already on their way to the valley. Ling reluctantly found herself in Yun's body. And Fan reminded her to behave just like Yun if they encountered soldiers. Ling, in Yun's body, bowed and agreed that she understood. Fan now wanted to meet the group of soldiers. Shortly after, Ling and Fan encountered a group of soldiers waiting by a helicopter. One of the soldiers yawned while another smoked. The smoking soldier greeted the presumed Yun and asked if she had found what she was looking for. Ling replied that she had found it, and the soldier asked what the next step was. Without a comment, Fan followed Ling and boarded the helicopter. Ling told the soldier that they would go back to where they came from. The soldier then asked who Fan was. Ling replied that it didn't concern him. Fan sat in the helicopter, completely covered except for his eyes, and received another attribute increase from the system. The helicopter took off and flew over a large green forest that stretched across the mountains on the horizon. The pilot announced that they had arrived in Lion Ridge City and that it would take another 10 minutes before they could land. The city was a large modern city surrounded by a huge wall and dominated by skyscrapers. Massive bodies towered over the wall, and giant bones were scattered around. The soldiers mocked the people on the ground who were examining the monster corpses, hoping to find a monster core and sell it on the black market. Ling looked ahead motionlessly and stubbornly, exuding a menacing and annoyed aura. One soldier immediately retorted that he wasn't interested in making money but would be satisfied to have a captain like Yun. Fan noticed that unlike the flourishing Lion Mountain, the human cities had been struck by an apocalyptic blow and were perishing. The helicopter landed, and Ling was informed that they had reached their desired location. She praised the good work and then proceeded to kill the two soldiers. Afterward, they made their way to a building belonging to the Strong Organization. The building's entrance bore a sign with the name, Strong Organization. Zhu mentioned that the enemy base didn't appear very strong and could be easily destroyed with a simple roar from Fan. Fan explained that they didn't need to overdo it and that he wanted to play with them first. By now, it was night again, and our group took care of several employees of the building who lay motionless on the ground. Fan lifted up a top and was somewhat disappointed because it was too small for him. Zhu said that she had investigated the premises and believed there would be a clue here. Fan noticed something and concentrated some energy in his eyes, allowing him to see through the walls and discern a woman's silhouette behind one of them. The woman prepared to fight, drew a weapon, and positioned herself. Ling was about to open the door, but Fan held her back because he wanted to handle it alone. The woman, who had been hiding, noticed that the group was approaching her. She drew her weapon and fired a shot. The bullet hit Fan, prompting Ling to insult the woman and draw her knife. However, Fan held her shoulder and reassured her that he was fine. He wondered what kind of technology produced bullets made of spiritual energy. The woman who had shot wondered why the bullet had no effect and whether Fan was an awakener. Shocked and panicked, she unleashed a volley of bullets at our group, but all the bullets hit Fan without any effect. Fan snapped his fingers and shattered the woman's weapon into tiny pieces. Startled and paralyzed for a few seconds, Fan seized the opportunity and grabbed the woman's wrists, holding them above her head to assert his dominance. The woman's breasts, barely held by her blouse, moved up and down. She realized that Fan was a beast man and wondered what kind of technology was behind it. The woman screamed that he could do whatever he wanted with her. Fan asked the woman if she apparently didn't belong to the organization and who she worked for. She replied that she wouldn't tell him, only that she had come to this organization to retrieve the stolen data her company had taken. Surprised by her foolish answer, Fan and Ling looked at her silently. Fan noticed a small note sticking out from her cleavage and grabbed it with two of his claws. Embarrassed, the woman blushed. It was a map that Fan examined closely. Lion Mountain was depicted on it, and he realized that people had their eye on his territory. Another helicopter was about to land on the building's roof. Our group heard through the corridors as a person informed someone named Lord Luoyi that the people from headquarters were about to arrive. Fan was somewhat surprised that it happened so quickly. Ling, still in Yun's body, recognized the name and became very angry. They saw a long corridor and overheard the conversation of three individuals across the halls. One of them presented a sarcophagus requested by the headquarters. Three people stood before it, a very tall, broad person with many muscles and yellow hair, a man in a blue suit, and in the middle, a woman with red hair who clearly had authority. She questioned why everything had to be so mysterious and why she had to personally handle it by candlelight when it concerned the whole matter. The man in the blue suit, Luo Yi, who was in Class B in Awakened, and increasingly the branch manager of the Su Ling branch of the Qiangxin group, informed the woman with red hair, Yamehu, the president of Class S and the secretary of the Qiangxin group headquarters, that the sarcophagus would break and fall apart once exposed to sunlight. Yamehu took note of this. Our small group followed the conversation and eavesdropped on it. Fan realized that they had hidden the sarcophagus here, so he asked Ling what they should do now, as the sarcophagus could be moved at any moment. However, Fan decided to observe the situation further before making themselves known. Luo Yi expressed his desire to carry the coffin out if there were no issues. Yamehu explained that it wasn't necessary and that she would take care of the rest. Yamehu then mentioned the name Wisco without further words, and the shadow of the third person grew larger and loomed behind her. The arms of the muscle-bound man tightly embraced the sarcophagus, and his veins became more prominent. With a sudden jerk, he lifted the sarcophagus onto his shoulders as if it were nothing. It turned out that this person was named Wisco, an awakened individual of Class A and the security captain of the Qiangxin Group headquarters. Fan observed the spectacle and grinned, realizing that there was immense power behind the muscles, indicating that Wisco was also an awakened individual. Yamehu then addressed Luoyi, making it clear once again that they didn't need any assistance. Luoyi was slightly surprised and wondered what she meant by that. Yamehu turned around and pointed towards our group. She asked Luoyi why someone else besides them was present, simultaneously shooting a thin thread towards Fan, which he barely managed to intercept. He was astonished that she had noticed him and realized that she, too, must be an awakened individual. Luo Yi rushed towards Fan, who successfully defended against the attack. Luo Yi was annoyed that someone suddenly interfered and wanted to get rid of him immediately to save face in front of Yamehu. He ran up and attempted a front kick towards Fan, but Fan easily dodged it. Luo Yi had to acknowledge Fan's speed but questioned whether Fan could keep up with his own speed and accelerated further. Yet, Fan effortlessly evaded these attacks as well. The system informed Fan that his dodging ability would increase by 1 point with each successful dodge. Luo Yi became arrogant, thinking that he was too fast for Fan and had no opportunity to strike anymore. He tried to rip off Fan's mask and reveal his true identity. He even managed to snatch Fan's cloak and tear it off. Afterward, Luo Yi was astonished and couldn't believe what he saw. Fan stood there like a young god, his six-pack chiseled like stone. Luo Yi realized that Fan, too, must be an awakened individual and had transformed into a lion. Yemehu was so captivated and excited and horny by the sight that her face turned red. Luo Yi asked Fan if his transformation into an lion had strengthened his defense beyond that of an ordinary person and inquired if he had ever been struck by a light kick. He channeled electricity into his foot, gaining momentum once again to kick Fan. His kick was aimed directly at Fan's face. As he struck Fan, the bones in his leg shattered into 100 tiny pieces, while Fan stood motionless with arms crossed. The system informed him that he had successfully defeated an awakened individual of Class B and received another status upgrade. Fan wondered what had just happened and why Luo Yi was writhing on the ground in pain. Zhu cheered and was proud of her king, praising his strength and the fact that the opponent was immediately incapacitated. Fan scratched his face and felt that he hadn't done anything special, but he realized that Luo Yi had provoked the whole situation. Yemehu watched the scene unfold and found it astonishing that Luo Yi, a Class B awakened individual, had lost so easily to an unknown person. Wisco asked his fallen colleague if he couldn't even defeat a small dog. In response, Wisco forcefully threw the sarcophagus at Fan. However, Fan caught the sarcophagus in mid-air and managed to place it on the ground without any damage. He was furious and screamed wildly, questioning how they could dare to throw away a precious sarcophagus and what would have happened if it had hit a child. Wisco observed the situation and pumped all his energy into his muscles, causing them to grow exponentially larger. Wisco explained that he wore a vest made of nanofibers and carbon fiber. And no matter how much his muscles swelled, his clothing would never burst. He slowly approached Fan. Zhu thought it would be better not to wear anything in these circumstances as the sight was quite grotesque. However, Fan remained unfazed. Wisco prepared to strike, believing that Fan could now die peacefully after he had exerted himself and pumped up his muscles. Suddenly, Ling appeared behind Wisco, also preparing to attack. She stabbed her small knife directly into the center of Wisco's muscles, but he seemed unaffected. Ling noticed that the blade was stuck and she couldn't pull it out because Wisco was tensing his muscles so hard. Ling struggled to penetrate the muscles. Wisco declared that muscles meant strength and further inflated his muscles, pushing Ling back. Fan prepared to flick her fingers against Wisco's cheek, asking him if he had trained his brain in addition to his muscles and if he had as much confidence in his brain as he had in his muscles. Wisco slowly turned around, wondering what that had to do with anything. Fan flicked his finger against Wisco's cheek, knocking him out cold. Teeth flew out of his mouth, and he fell unconscious to the ground. Fan remarked that his brain couldn't have been well trained if he was knocked out with just one hit. Yemehu was disappointed in her comrades and believed that they were all just simple limbs with developed bodies and useless minds. She was angry with her useless comrades. Yemehu was different. She had managed to rise from being a homeless little girl who had lost her home, step by step, to become the secretary of the chairman of the Qiangxin group. She owed her success to her clever mind. She raised her hand to her collar and wanted to use her awakened special abilities. As a result, she took off her coat and was dressed in a sexy latex outfit. She was ready to take on the lion, and although she found him intimidating, she was prepared for the fight. She struck a sexy fighting pose and looked very seductive. Yemehu didn't care whether Fan was a human or an animal. As long as he was a male being and was hit by her ability, he would become an obedient slave and obey her. However, Fan was unimpressed by her ability, while Ling and Zhou were outraged at how cheap it was. Yemehu was confused that it hadn't worked and wondered how that could be. She tried to concentrate and released some energy in her eyes to see better. She realized that Fan hadn't released any energy yet and that he must be a pure yang creature. She recognized that this was why normal seduction techniques didn't work on him. Therefore, she proceeded with her plan B and used her ability again. Fan became confused and dizzy. Then, Fan started screaming, and his horn began to glow, while fire ignited and blazed around him. Meanwhile, the woman with large breasts who had left Fan and Ling tied up was still in the storage room. Sound asleep. Fan became increasingly inflamed, and his mane grew within the flames. Ling grew concerned and asked what would happen to their king and why he suddenly entered this mode. Fan then swung his hand and struck Ling, causing her to be thrown backward due to the force of the blow. However, Fan quickly regained his composure and stared at Yamehu with a crazed look. Startled, she recoiled and realized that this extremely pure and strong desire within Fan was not easy to control. Her breasts threatened to burst out of the latex, so enormous were they. As Fan loomed over her, growing angrier, Yamehu trembled and fell onto her plump, juicy buttocks. How could she retract this desire she had evoked in Fan? Ling, lying on the ground, asked Zhou what had happened to Fan and whether this desire they were witnessing would consume the king. Zhou explained that everything in the universe possesses a fire of the heart, composed of desire and the fire of karma. Both types of fire are extremely dangerous, so it is crucial for practitioners to utilize their innate energy of divine protection to control and balance the fire. Yamehu had disturbed Fan's state of mind, igniting his desire. Now the king was acting purely on instinct. If they allowed him to continue like this, his desire would ultimately consume him and lead to his death. Ling partially understood what Zhou was explaining and asked what they could do to stop it. Zhou said they could do nothing but discharge the king's desire. Meanwhile, the flames surrounding Fan encircled Yamehu, curling around her body like octopus tentacles, caressing her magnificent bosom and other erogenous zones. She screamed that it was too hot and painful. Sweat poured down her face. Ling remarked that it was only fair that the one who awakened the king's desire should now be responsible for satisfying it. Zhou, well informed about this matter due to her ability to absorb the king's demonic energy and transform into a demon, was aware of the situation. It grew hotter and Yamehu struggled to breathe, while Fan grew angrier, grinding his teeth in front of her. Panicking, Ling spoke to Zhou, expressing her belief that they couldn't just stand by and watch as Fan burned someone alive. She couldn't bear to witness it and asked if they couldn't do anything. At that moment, Zhou spoke with a firm voice. She was aware of her own nature and explained that she embodied inner fire strength. Her existence was marked by ghostly flames, the 6 divine flames, and the blazing flames of transcendental ecstasy. She could harmonize with any kind of fire. However, she was now faced with a new challenge, the king's desire fire. Zhou extended her hand towards Fan, drawing in and absorbing the flames from him. Her blue flames swirled around the king's golden flames, and she herself transformed from her blue appearance into a golden one. More and more flames departed from the king and flew towards Zhou. They were very close. Zhou did her best, calming Fan as she practically merged with his flames, and he regained himself. Yamehu woke up completely drenched in sweat, wondering if she was still alive. Fan fell backward to the ground, and Yamehu realized that this lion was far too dangerous. She had nearly been burned alive by his uncontrollable desire. However, before Yamehu could rise properly, Ling touched her shoulder and warned her not to move, or she would do something to her. Fan reached for the back of his head, rubbing away the pain. He wondered why he felt so weak and what had happened. The system informed him that he had activated the Sage mode, increasing his mental strength by 100 points and his stamina by 10 points, but his merits had decreased by -100 points. Fan looked at his system window and was surprised by what he read there. He had activated the Sage mode and was now able to control the fire of the heart, which made him extremely happy. Fan looked up and saw the situation between Ling and Yamehu, which surprised him and caused his nose to bleed. Ling was afraid that Yamehu had done something again and immediately attacked her, but Yamehu denied everything and said that she hadn't done anything this time. Zhou, still having the king's flames and looking golden, was the only one concerned about Fan's well-being. He was struggling with his bloody nose. Fan asked Zhou if he had understood everything correctly, if she had devoured his desire, and that's why she had become like this. She explained that once she had fully digested the great king's desire, she would return to normal. Ling held Yumeihu by the throat and said it was all her fault. She was responsible for Fan wasting his life energy and asked for permission to kill her. However, Yumeihu replied that they couldn't just kill her easily and had a cunning expression on her face. Suddenly, Ling noticed something, as if she had been stung by a bee. Yumeihu then threw herself to the ground and begged Fan to spare her life. Fan told her that she was giving up too quickly and should kneel. However, she responded as if she hadn't heard what Fan said, promising to do and say anything he ordered her to. Fan asked about the sarcophagus and its purpose, looking down at Yumeihu, who was in a sexy pose. Her breasts were still so large, and the now torn latex suit barely managed to contain them. She answered Fan's question, saying that she wasn't exactly sure, but she knew it was a tool for rebirth. Fan wanted to know more and continued to ask. Yumeihu went on, saying that it was said the sarcophagus contained ancient secrets and that one could achieve rebirth by lying inside it. Fan then asked what the price for this rebirth was. She explained that one would enter a kind of illusion world. And if they got lost in the illusion, their soul would scatter, and their body would turn to dust. Fan pondered and realized that the 3 life souls were the remains of those who had failed. Perhaps it could help him obtain a body, but he found the risk too high. Ling left the body of the muscle mommy and told Fan that she would like to try it. At first, Fan found it too risky, but the system informed him a moment later that he had received a reward for completing the mission. The success chance for the 3 life soul sarcophagus trial would increase by 30%. Fan wasn't too thrilled with his system update and found this reward ridiculous. He wondered what kind of lousy reward it was. Just increasing the probability wouldn't change anything since the risk of failure still existed. However, Ling said that she still wanted to do it because her life belonged to Fan, and if she couldn't even accomplish such a simple task, she wouldn't be worthy of him. Fan made a pensive face but agreed and allowed her to enter the sarcophagus. Ling lay down in the sarcophagus, and Fan extended his hand, forming a magical circle around it. Blue flames and lightning shot out from his hand towards Ling. Fan said that once Ling's heart flame showed signs of extinguishing in the illusion, he would pull her out of the stone sarcophagus. Ling was ready to begin. She closed her eyes and lay in the sarcophagus, immersing herself in the illusion world. Ling lay in a stone sarcophagus with her eyes closed as she was about to enter the world of illusion. Purple magical circles emanated from the sarcophagus, and runes rose up. Suddenly, Ling opened her eyes and saw a small village at the foot of a mountain in front of her. A beautiful forest stretched around the village, and she ran down the hill where she stood, heading towards the village. Ling recognized the village and then saw her parents standing in front of their house, waving for her to come in for dinner. Her father also wanted to serve wine and asked her to hurry. As she recognized her parents, tears welled up in Ling's eyes, and she cried even more as she remembered that all of this was just an illusion. Although this illusion seemed very real, it couldn't deceive Ling. Ling wiped the tears from her face. Although she knew it was all just an illusion, she still wanted to take a quick look and see what would happen if she played along. She entered the house and saw her parents already setting the table, and she happily joined them for the meal. They laughed and had a great time, spending a beautiful moment together. Fan, who was watching the whole spectacle from outside, looked somewhat unenthusiastic but had to answer Zhou's question about how Ling was doing, saying that her life flame was very stable. His hand, connected to Ling's life flame, glowed with a blue flame. Fan hoped that she would endure this catastrophe well and continued to watch the world of illusion. People congratulated each other, and lamps hung everywhere. Ling's parents welcomed many people and invited them in to witness their daughter's wedding. Ling and a stranger sat next to each other, being the center of attention that evening. Both were dressed in red, and Ling was completely veiled. She then said something to her husband. Zhou alerted Fan that the sun was about to rise, and the sunrise was imminent. If Ling didn't make it in time, the sarcophagus would be destroyed, and Ling would turn to dust. Fan realized that Ling was still struggling, and her life flame was still very stable, but it was too difficult for Ling to break through the sarcophagus on her own. Fan mentioned that he couldn't wait any longer. He inserted a finger into the barrier of the sarcophagus and broke through it. Then, he attempted to pull Ling out of the sarcophagus with his entire hand. He reached further into the barrier until his two fingers reached the core and epicenter of the illusion world within the barrier, destroying it. Ling then saw through her red veil her husband, who resembled Fan in his fully human form, calling her name. However, she soon realized that it was actually Fan who was calling her name. Ling suddenly opened her eyes and returned to the real world. She leaned forward, and runes continued to fly out of the sarcophagus, soaring above her head. Zhou anxiously noticed that the sun would shine in any moment now. But before that happened, all the runes that had risen from the sarcophagus just moments ago flew into Ling's body. As a result of this event, her eyes also glowed in a yellow light. Fan laughed and remarked that everything had worked out. Zhou also realized that Ling now had a proper body and was no longer in her ghostly form, causing Ling to look at her hands to confirm it herself. Fan reached out his hand and welcomed her back to the real world. Ling cried tears of joy, and they streamed down her cheeks. She was overjoyed and expressed deep gratitude towards Fan. Zhou and Ling were so happy that they jumped into Fan's arms and embraced him. Fan was also very happy that everything had worked out. And the system informed him that he had successfully completed the Ling quest. His reputation increased by 20 points, and his demon consciousness was elevated to level 3, granting him 2 additional abilities, demon consciousness detection and demon consciousness communication. Furthermore, due to his intrusion into the illusion world, he received another reward, the inheritance of Xiao and an expansion of his rock property. Fan was delighted with the numerous rewards he had received for this task and the fact that they were all so substantial. Yimeihu, who was still with their group, pretended to demonstrate how touching the reunion was and congratulated them. She then pretended to have nothing else to do and expressed a desire to leave. But she subtly took a step back. Zhou whispered in her ear, asking if she was thinking of running away after insulting Fan. He asked Fan how they should proceed with her. Fan touched his chin and contemplated what they could do with her. He realized that she had piqued his interest and had helped him learn the wise mode. Moreover, he considered that she could continue to assist him in improving his abilities in the future. As a result, he reached for her arm, surprising Yimeihu. Fan had decided that she should continue helping him in his cultivation. He patted her head and told her that she should assist him until he was satisfied. This confused Yimeihu, and she was completely overwhelmed by the situation. Then, our heroes set the entire building on fire, and it burned brightly. Fan stared at the small campfire and realized that he had no other choice but to eliminate them all as they had targeted his mountain. Suddenly, he was surprised by a system window in a purple design that he had never seen before. It displayed a message and a warning, "Attention, danger. 2 resurrections have just occurred, and these 2 are only the beginning." This message was also displayed on his lion mountain, causing 2 animals to transform into abominable creatures. A deer, whose antlers continued to grow as if possessed by a demon, pierced its own body. Similarly, a werewolf-like creature developed tumor-like growths on its back. The snake, which worked closely with the real Fan, hurriedly rushed to him. The real Fan had been waiting for this moment, and the system presented him with a new task. He was to open the boundary and expand his territory because his mountain was under attack by a powerful energy, and the size of his influence would reflect his strength. Before the second transformation was completed, he needed to expand his territory on Lion Mountain as much as possible to withstand the influence of the demonic aura. Fan had anticipated that the system would give him such a task and wondered if such events would force the system to assign him more tasks and if there was a limit to them. Suddenly, another system window appeared and stated that if Fan couldn't master this task and achieve his goal within the time limit, his body would explode, and he would die as he wouldn't be able to contain the aura anymore. Fan realized that the extent of his mountain had never been precisely confirmed, and he didn't actually know how far it reached. So, he employed his new technique of demon consciousness to finally determine the true size of his territory. Fan was surprised by how much he could see at the third level of demon consciousness and how he now had a view of the entire river, almost as if he had the perspective of a god. As he looked closer and delved deeper into the green forests, he discovered his golden fruit tree had been cut down. He pondered how this could have happened and wondered what had become of the guards who were supposed to protect the fruit tree, which was meant to be guarded by pangolins. Fan examined the surroundings more closely and spotted a defeated pangolin lying on the ground. This made him very angry. How dare someone harm one of his comrades? Furthermore, Fan noticed remnants of purple energy around him, and he could hardly believe that someone had the audacity to do such a thing on his mountain and then flee so cowardly. He followed the trail of purple energy left behind by the attacker, eager to find and punish the intruder. He followed it further until he saw a very long black millipede enveloped in that eerie purple-black ghostly energy. Fan became even angrier that this little beetle had dared to cause trouble in his territory and topple his golden fruit tree, which was the original spiritual root of Lion Mountain. Fan explained that the tree's fruit only bloomed every 10 years, and the tree itself only bore fruit every 10 years, which took another 10 years to mature. Consuming one of these fruits granted 30 years of demonic power. Fan swore that he would kill this beetle and crush it into dust for his new golden fruit tree. He called upon his most loyal subordinates, including the green snake Xiao Qing, followed by the parrot Endless. The white fox Ollie and a giant bear were also present. The group made their way to the golden fruit tree and discovered the injured pangolin. Chuanshan Bi, the second brother of Pangolin. The bear informed Fan that Chuanshan Bi was still alive and could be saved. Fan observed the repulsive millipede and asked the bear for assistance. He requested that the bear take good care of the pangolin and heal it while he dealt with his future fertilizer. The millipede shouted at the group and prepared itself for battle. This did not make Fan happy at all, and he angrily shouted back, questioning how the millipede dared to shout at him and that he would show it a true lion's roar. His eyes gleamed golden, and golden sparks crackled around him. But before Fan could roar, the green snake Xiao Qing intervened, stating that such trivial matters did not require the intervention of His Majesty and that she would take care of it for him. She lunged at the millipede, mouth wide open, ready to attack it with her teeth. She coiled her body around the millipede, squeezing tightly, while continuing to instill fear by displaying her long and sharp teeth. The pangolin approached Fan and apologized for being unable to protect the golden fruits, expressing deep remorse. However, Fan merely asked if it knew the origin of the millipede and where it would be lurking here on Lion Mountain. Chuanshan Bi explained that the millipede was originally a small earthworm tasked with loosening the soil beneath the golden tree. He further explained that the spiritual energy within the soil had come to life and suddenly began possessing the earthworm, causing it to mutate and change its body. The intelligence, however, remained the same, and thus, its rage spiraled out of control. As the battle continued, the pangolin explained that it had been feeding on the fallen leaves of the tree throughout the year. While the green snake Xiao Qing continued to fight against the centipede and managed to bite it in two, the two halves of the centipede crashed to the ground, and white smoke rose from the ends of its lifeless body. Xiao Qing remained vigilant and noticed that the ends were mutating, and now she faced two adversaries ready to counterattack. Fan was surprised by the division and multiplication of the centipede's body after being injured, realizing that it must have originally been a rainworm. The snake continued to battle the two halves of the centipede but started to take some counterattacks, even though she was still strong in her offense. Xiao Qing found it challenging and recognized that the two halves were launching more frequent counterattacks, hitting her more often. The bear cracked his knuckles and wanted to assist the snake, along with the fox and the parrot, but Xiao Qing shouted that she could handle it alone and didn't need any help. She had worked tirelessly by the king's side day and night, and today was the time to test her accomplishments and show them to her friends. Xiao Qing focused her energy, and faint green sparks flickered around her. Then she transformed her form into a dragon-like creature. Her scales grew stronger, she gained legs and hands, whiskers, and more fur overall. Her color changed from green to a bright blue, and her appearance became more majestic. Even the two centipede halves noticed her increased strength and nervously recoiled. Xiao Qing immediately unleashed a massive hyperbeam attack on the two small beetles, causing a tremendous explosion, and for the moment, nothing more was seen of them. After the powerful beam struck the two centipedes, Xiao Qing's transformation was already fading, and she slowly returned to her normal form. Xiao Qing was visibly exhausted and gasping for breath from the exertion. Her friends, the parrot, the fox, and the bear, were completely amazed and astonished by the technique she had developed and the destructive power she could unleash. The parrot became somewhat annoyed and remarked that he had always wondered why the snake slept in the presence of their king, Fan. He thought it was simply because it was nice and cool there, a place where snakes like to sleep. But now he realized that she had been using the king's demonic energy to cultivate and train herself. The bear and the fox also playfully became a little angry once they learned the true reason and saw it for themselves. However, the snake urged them all to remain silent, as the king was still present. And there was no reason to argue now. Fan, on the other hand, recognized that it was a competition for his favor, and the system informed him that this battle increased his charm points. The smoke dispersed, and one of the centipedes was still alive. Xiao Qing noticed this a bit too late, as the remnants had already begun to burrow into the underground. However, Xiao Qing wasted no time and followed the remnants into the hole they had dug. Fan gathered his energy and could see the energy lines. He explained to his friends that this energy system was connected to the Lowenberg and its power, and the consequences could be devastating if it were damaged. He told his friends that he and they should also descend to help Xiao Qing and prevent any potential damage early on. As Fan and his group caught up with the snake, his first question was about her well-being. When she turned around and noticed Fan and the group, she replied that the remnants had escaped because she could feel the ground and the attackers through her skin. However, Xiao Qing had trouble with her sense of smell due to the strong aura of the energy lines. Fan activated his demonic consciousness once again, enveloping himself in golden energy. He realized that the first spiritual recovery must be the surface, and the second spiritual recovery must be the underground veins. Furthermore, he could sense that these earth spirit veins were connected to his spine. With that, Fan took the lead with his huge paws and commanded his subordinates to dig 1 meter deep to find the remnants. They dug a small tunnel, led by the green snake and followed by the other comrades. Fan noticed that it felt the same down here in the earth as it did in his cave above, and wondered if there might be an ancient ruin down here that would justify such energy. Xiao Qing drew her king's attention to a pile of bones in front of them, with the centipede they had just fought dead on the ground. Amidst the heap of bones and in front of the two dead centipedes, there was a red parasol concealing a person. Red energy circled around the area. Fan noticed this red parasol and suddenly became very serious in his expression. The parasol moved, revealing a beautiful woman named Qilua, who said that they had arrived just in time.